Welcome back to Rahasya Gata. We've already journeyed together through 15 episodes, and today we're diving right into episode 16. Now sit back, because I'm going to tell you a story, one of the most heartbreaking sequences in this epic. We're talking about the forest departure of Ram, Sita, and Lakshmana. We're going to break down the exact moments that literally turned a kingdom's greatest celebration into its absolute darkest night. So let's just get right into it. The real tragedy actually starts behind closed doors. We're looking at the unseen, just completely heartbreaking sacrifice of Urmila, Lakshmana's wife. She desperately wants to go with him, right? But Lakshmana has to lay out a really harsh reality. He's going to be serving Ram day and night. He just can't care for her out there. And on top of that, he gives her this monumental task. She has to stay behind to basically keep the shattered Mata Kaushalya alive through her love. And then he asks for one final thing: no tears. He asked to take the image of her brave, smiling face to inspire him for the next 14 years. I mean, wow. It's this silent, massive sacrifice that truly sets the emotional tone for everything that's about to happen. Section 1. Kaikeyi's cruelty. A dark plot unfolds. So, transitioning from that quiet sorrow in the inner chambers, we step into the tension-filled palace halls, where this really dark plot has taken root. And the emotional whiplash here is just staggering. Out in the streets of Ayodhya, the citizens are in absolute shock. They're weeping, saying Ram's exile is it's like being handed poison right after being promised nectar. But inside, it's a totally different story. Queen Kaikeyi and her maid Manthara aren't just unbothered. They are coldly calculating every little detail. Manthara is actually gleefully gathering up these rough, ascetic bark garments so the exiled royals won't even have to waste time looking for them. It's this chilling, ruthless ambition happening right against the backdrop of total public agony. And in the face of all this cruelty, Guru Mata steps in with a fierce, desperate warning. She tells Kaikeyi, "You are crossing the absolute limits." But the most powerful part here is her curse about Kaikeyi's legacy. She warns her that, from this day forward, whenever the world speaks of a cruel stepmother, Kaikeyi's name is going to be the prime example. Literally no parent will ever name their daughter Kaikeyi again. But completely blinded by her own stubbornness, Kaikeyi just brushes it off. She accepts this completely ruined legacy as long as her son gets that throne. Section 2. Shri Ram's duty. A father's heartbreak. Okay, let's move into the royal court, where the true weight of this whole tragedy really hits you. Ram arrives with Sita and Lakshmana to get his father's final blessing. And man, this interaction is absolutely fascinating. And tragic, honestly. We have this striking contrast. On one hand, King Dashrath is completely broken. He's literally begging his son to commit treason. Imagine that. He tells Ram, "You're a warrior, rebel against me. Take this throne by force." He's willing to torch his own life's merit and reputation just to save his son. But Ram? He remains absolutely calm, flawlessly devoted. He absolutely refuses to let his father's honor be stained, seeing the forest exile not as some punishment, but as his righteous duty. It's all about protecting his father's legacy as a king who never ever broke a promise. Section 3. The ascetic garments disputing Sita's status. Which brings us to a really poignant conflict right before the departure, centering entirely on Sita's status. This is a genuinely shocking moment. It's one thing for the brothers to accept exile, right? But Queen Kaikeyi takes it a massive step further. She hands those rough ascetic bark clothes not just to Ram and Lakshmana, but to Sita, the princess of Mithila. The whole court, including the royal advisors and a totally horrified King Dashrath, just erupts. They're outraged. They argue that Kaikeyi's boon only covered Ram's exile, so technically Sita should be going to the forest with all the luxuries, jewels, and royal comforts fitting a queen. They even try to physically stop her from changing. But Sita's response here, it's an absolute masterclass in devotion. She completely rejects those royal comforts the gurus are promising her. She just asks the court this simple yet incredibly powerful question. Does it suit a wife to live in royal luxury while her husband lives as a wandering ascetic? I mean, would that bring any honor to her father or her husband's lineage? No way. She refuses all the loopholes. She insists on sharing her husband's exact fate, right down to the rough clothes she wears, proving her commitment is absolutely unshakable. Section 4. The ultimate severance. Ties broken forever. Now we hit the absolute climax of this palace drama. This is pure explosive action driven by unbearable grief. The departure builds into complete chaos in this rapid-fire sequence of events. First, the royal attire is finally gone. Second, the trio boards the chariot, driven by the minister Sumantra. Third, the second that chariot starts to move, King Dashrath physically collapses, just screaming for the chariot to stop. And fourth, this intensely private family tragedy completely spills out into the streets. There's this massive public outcry as the citizens of Ayodhya finally realize, oh my gosh, our beloved prince is actually leaving. And right in the middle of this sheer chaos, a shattered King Dashrath turns to Kaikeyi, and he issues this devastating declaration. He publicly disowns her. Right there, he announces that the sacred vows they took before the holy fire at their wedding are completely terminated. He cuts all ties, declaring she is dead to him in this life and the next. He even goes as far as to say that if her son Bharat accepts this tainted throne, Bharat's funeral offerings will never reach his soul. It is the ultimate, irreversible severance. Section 5. The Tearful Journey. Halt at Tamasa River. So, shifting our focus outside those heavy palace walls, the royal chariot finally starts its tragic exodus away from the capital. And the public's reaction? Staggering. It's this overwhelming wave of love and, honestly, rebellion from the citizens of Ayodhya. They abandon their homes, their shops, their entire lives, and literally run after the chariot. They completely refuse to accept the king's order. To them, Ayodhya doesn't matter anymore. In their eyes, wherever Ram resides, even if it's the middle of a deep forest, that place is going to be their true capital. As you can imagine, this creates a massive logistical and emotional nightmare for Ram. He desperately tries to reason with this giant crowd following him. First, he stops the chariot and tries to explain his strict duty to his father's word. Next, he explicitly commands them to go back and serve their new king, Bharat, with love and dedication. But they're not having it. The crowd absolutely refuses to listen. Their devotion totally overrides his logic. They basically tell him, look, even God bows to true devotees, so you have to bow to our wish to follow you. It just perfectly highlights this unbreakable bond between a true ruler and his people. But eventually, biology takes over, right? The sun starts to set on this incredibly tragic day. Ram realizes everyone is just exhausted, and it's time for evening prayers, so he orders the chariot to halt. The grief-stricken procession of the royals, plus thousands of citizens, finally comes to a temporary, uneasy pause to rest for the night right at the banks of the Tamasa River. And that brings us to a huge, huge question. The citizens are dead set on following him into the wilderness the next morning. Ram knows this will completely destroy Ayodhya and ruin his father's promise. So, what monumental decision is Ram going to make under the cover of darkness tonight while his devoted citizens are fast asleep on the riverbank? Well, you'll have to find out in the next part of our story. Thank you so much for joining me as I tell this story for my channel, Rahasya Gatha. Like I said, we've successfully uploaded episodes 1 through 15, and I am so thrilled to have brought you episode 16 today. If you enjoyed this storytelling journey, please do me a huge favor. Like this explainer, comment your thoughts down below on the incredible sacrifices we saw today, and make sure you subscribe to Rahasya Gatha. Tune in next time for episode 17, where we find out what happens when the sun rises over the Tamasa River. Keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next one.